Party people. Bobo here with BrassReel Brothers. Thank you so much for turning back for the episode of BrassReel Tonight, where we talk about everything coming out to the big screen, everything coming out at home to stream, and all the shenanigans going on behind the scenes. Well, guys, hope you all are having a good day. Rylan was supposed to join me today, and we were going to talk about the Candyman for a little bit, but he had something come up with work again, and they just had to call him in. He's really busy right now. So, look, hopefully one day coming up soon, he'll be back on the show. But right now, I just think he's busy. So we'll get this rolling, though, soon with him, hope sometime in the future. And we are going to do our little Halloween special coming up where we got some big stuff planned. I think we're actually going to rent out a theater, which is pretty badass. But anyways, just wanted to say that because I'd said yesterday on the show that we were going to be doing a Candyman thing. And we're not going to be able to do it today. I was going to discuss it with him. But with that being said, do check out my Candyman review on the channel. That'll definitely give you a good idea if you want to see it or not. I thought it was great. I got a lot of things to say about it, though. And look, guys, if you aren't able to tune into the show and comment while I'm talking, which I definitely want you to do, please tune in all the time. Comment, give me some stuff to talk about. But if you're not able to do that, you're always able to send it to brassreelbobby@gmail.com. And I'll definitely respond to you on the show. We'll talk about some stuff there if I know what's going on with it. And most of the time I do. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button so you can help us make it to the top. So anyways, just want to throw that stuff in there to begin with. We got some crazy stuff going on in the news. Nothing wild, but we got some cool stuff, I think. Definitely, we got a new Bond trailer today. I think we may have gotten it late yesterday, but I wasn't able to see it till this morning. So I'm really pumped up about that. To me, that's a movie that's been obviously well overdue. It was supposed to come out in April 2020, and then it got pushed back again till November last year. And then they were like, all right, well, we just got to see what's going on here, which every movie has done, you know? Excuse me. Yeah, every movie's done it, but I feel like Bond is one of the ones that sort of took the first hit, considering it was supposed to come out in April. And I think other movies were supposed to, come out last summer as well. But the Bond one, I feel like, is the one that's really been pushed back. So I'm really excited to talk about that trailer here in a second. But, a movie that we haven't talked about and I've wanted to talk about for a while, and I keep on forgetting to talk about, is a movie called Last Night in Soho. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, have heard anything about it, but it's directed by Edgar Wright. And he's the same guy who did Hot Fuzz. Like, he's real good friends with Simon Pegg and those guys, Nick Frost. And he did Hot Fuzz. He did Shaun of the Dead. He did their At World's End movie. I mean, but he's done some other things as well. But this one is really piquing my interest. And first off, it's starring Anya Taylor-Joy, which everybody, I think, is in agreement that she's pretty awesome. She's definitely succeeding well. She was one of the things that shined about New Mutants. She's awesome in Queen's Gambit. Everybody loves that show. But the whole thing is, like I said, it's got me pretty intrigued. And it's coming out October 29th. And it's set in the Soho district during the swinging 60s. And there's this sort of like time travel element involved. And if you've seen the trailer, you know what's up with it. And as far as what I'm talking about, that feel. But it's definitely just interesting because it starts out feeling like this, it starts out having this vibe of like, oh, this nice, cool stuff going on. Why you see this sort of weird sort of transference from modern day time to the 60s. But like I said, it's got this element of just like that noir to it, and I'm really looking forward to that. But at the same time, it's also got out of nowhere, you see shots in the trailer like this, and then shots in the trailer like this. And it's just like, okay, what is up with this movie? And it really, like, first just starts showing you like this sort of good, cool feeling, sort of a way that Quentin Tarantino did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The way he recreated Hollywood in the 60s was just amazing. It looked so real. You felt like you were there. And this trailer makes me feel like that you're being placed into that time. For example, at the very beginning of the trailer, it shows her going to sleep and she wakes up and she goes outside of her hotel room and she's like walking out to the streets of Manhattan. They're showing a big theater and it's like showing and it's Thunderball, the old James Bond movie, which, that right away has just got me reeled in. That's a cool little hook just to pull you into what's going on in this movie. But like I said, it starts off with that really cool feeling of like this is a 60s noir feeling film. Anya Taylor-Joy is singing, and but it also it's got this kind of interesting overtone to it that I don't want to say creepy, but it's just strange. And then as the trailer goes on, you start getting more images like this, and then the coolness and that noir of the 60s feel starts to turn into a little bit of dread and darkness. And like I said, they blend it really well. And Edgar Wright has come out saying this recently on the film, saying in the film, a young girl passionate about fashion design is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s where she encounters her idol, a dazzling wannabe singer. But in 1960s London, it's not what it seems, and at times seems to fall apart with shady consequences. So when you see the trailer, it looks like there's like a ghost murder involved or a ghost killer involved, and it's like dimensions are crossing over in a weird way. Like I said, whether it's ghost dimensions crossing over with our dimension. But anyways, it just starts off seeming like this cool film, like, that's something that my grandma would be like, oh, look how sweet this is going to be nice. And then by the end of it, you're just like, oh, yep. So I'm just excited about it. And it's something that I wanted to talk about last night in Soho, directed by Edgar Wright. I just think it's something to really look forward to. It looks original. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. The trailer alone is like something I've never seen before. So, like I said, just wanted to talk about that for a second. Now, moving on to something that, and a guy that's sort of been out of it for a while. And when I say out of it, he's been out of the spotlight for a while, but he used to be totally in the spotlight, is Francis Ford Coppola. And Francis Ford Coppola used to be with the greats, and this is him on the left here. But I mean, he's considered to be up there with Martin Scorsese, Spielberg, and all the other greats. He's done so many great films, but then he sort of just disappeared, and you hadn't heard anything from him. At least I hadn't heard anything from him from a while. And I know he did like sort of a cheap, low budget indie horror film that I don't know how well received it was, and part of it has to do, from what I understand, that he's not easy to work with. And he's sort of been tainted by a lot of people. And back in the day, that kind of thing, I guess, could fly. Excuse me. Speaking of fly, could fly a little easier. There wasn't the communication of the internet, for one thing, for people to just transfer all these different things, photos. Nobody had phones with photos on them. People barely even had cameras except for the people making the movie. So it just was a different time, and so things like that slid under the cracks more, and it was sort of like, oh, he's a director, he's got a vision. Stanley Kubrick was also known for not really being tough to work with. But in today's light, where you have things coming out with like Joss Whedon, who, that one was a little tough for me to take when I first heard about that, but people were just starting to come out saying that he was really hard to work with on the Justice League set because he came in and filled in for Zack Snyder when the studio wanted to switch gears. You guys know how that story. But they were saying that he was really tough to work with, and a lot of it was Ray Fisher. And Ray Fisher, as Cyborg, was trying to make all these complaints, and nobody believed him. But then Sarah Michelle Gellar came out later, Buffy. She did Buffy. And this is somebody you got to remember who keeps her mouth shut. And I don't mean like she needs to keep her mouth shut. I'm saying that she's got a family. She does her own thing. She is not involved in the gossip of Hollywood. So for her to come out and say something about Joss Whedon like that, I mean, it gains a lot more validity in my eyes. And that was tough to swallow because, this is the guy that was sort of responsible for one of my favorite franchises of all time, and a lot of people's, and definitely the most popular franchise of all time, is the Avengers. So, I think with that coming out, people got canceled a little bit more, with more people being able to be like, no, we're tired of taking this stuff from directors. And so I feel like because of that, Francis Ford Coppola sort of floated out of the picture a little bit and just wasn't doing things anymore. I mean, again, we're talking about the guy who did the Godfather trilogy, which a lot of people don't like the third one. I love the third one. He even did a new one called Coda, Godfather 3 Coda, where apparently there was a lot of studio meddling in that third one. And maybe there's all kinds of stuff. The girl that was supposed to play his daughter ended up getting killed by some sort of stalker, and she was like an up and coming star. And so he ended up getting his daughter, Sofia Coppola, to play the daughter of Al Pacino. And then, she's not that great of an actress, but went on to be a great director. Anyways, there was a lot of crazy stuff with that one. So he even remade that one. Apparently, it's got the original ending he wanted. And I actually like Godfather 3. One of my favorite parts about it is I love Andy Garcia in it. I think he's just a great character. And I think it's a good movie. Is it as good as 1 and 2? Of course not. It's not. I mean, it's just not as good. But I do think it's really good. But man, again, talking about the greatness of Coppola and some of the things he's done is Apocalypse Now. I mean, arguably in the top 5, definitely top 10 films ever made because of the gravity of it, because of how epic it was, how huge it was. It was one of the biggest films to ever be made at the time. I mean, that right there is that opening scene of the film with the explosions and everything. As soon as you see that, you're like, oh man, I really know this is what I'm about to get into. And then, this is a painted picture of it, obviously, but just the Charlie Sheen coming out of the water, that's the real picture of it right there. So many epic moments in that movie and such a truth of a film too. I mean, it just nothing at that time when that movie had coming out, like Robert Duvall right here talking about he loves to smell of napalm in the morning, and just the way these guys were filming with all these bombs going off behind them, everything. It was a dangerous set. Point I'm trying to make is it was pioneer filmmaking. It was like along the lines of Orson Welles vision filmmaking, because that guy was another one, tough to work with, went over budget all the time. And this movie was sort of doing that. Turned out to be Oscar winning, Oscar performance winning, Oscar, all kind of Oscar stuff. It was a great film. Still to this day, I love it. I own it. I think it's amazing. It's more than just, that's the thing about Francis Ford Coppola. He made movies that were more than just a sit down, oh, watch it. They were never popcorn movies. They were very in-depth, dialogue driven a lot of the time. But anyways, the reason I'm talking about Francis Ford Coppola is that he's actually back in the limelight now. Apparently he's been working on this epic forever. And I think it's called Megalopolis. Is that how you say it? Megalopolis. That just doesn't, that gives me a little marble mouth, doesn't it? Doesn't really roll off the tongue like you want it to. But yeah, anyways, he's getting Oscar Isaac and Francis Ford Coppola. I mean, excuse me, Oscar Isaac and oh my goodness, Forrest Whitaker. I was drawing a blank there for a second to join him. And Oscar Isaac's getting all the roles. He's going to be Moon Knight coming up here soon. Forrest Whitaker was already in Black Panther 2. Both of those guys in the Marvel universe. But I'm glad that he's coming out, making this thing. And honestly, I hadn't heard anything about it, but apparently he's been trying to make this thing forever. And it's saying that the financial, configurations are still evolving. But this dude, Coppola, is 82 now. And I mean, that's, look, Clint Eastwood's still doing it. So I guess you can still do it, Coppola. Go ahead and do your thing, boy. But at 82, going to make a movie that's supposed to be this epic, and he's kind of doing the same thing he did with Apocalypse Now. And so one of the main taglines for this is Francis Ford Coppola, how winning Cannes 40 years ago saved Apocalypse Now and making Megalopolis, why Scorsese almost helmed it, all this stuff. And it's just, I don't really understand why he's trying to make his big break again at 82. Is it because he fell out and sort of lost his limelight, and does he not want to end on that bad reputation? Because recently he was doing this whole Coda thing, and then he's coming back to do this Megalopolis thing. Maybe it's a good deal. I mean, like I said, maybe people enjoy the story. Maybe it is something that's great, kind of like James Cameron's Avatar. He's going to be wanting to do that. But to be honest, I haven't really heard anything about this movie. I'm not really even sure what it's going to be about. But I think it's supposed to be something around 9/11. It says Deadline has written about Coppola's Megalopolis hopes for several years. Like, I've seen second unit footage of Manhattan architecture and street sounds that was shot 20 years ago. Campaign that ended after 9/11 shook Manhattan to its core. Coppola's enthusiasm never wavered. So again, I'm not sure exactly, but it's also got John Voight, Zendaya's in it, Michelle Pfeiffer, Jessica Lange. I mean, sorry, this page keeps on moving on me. I mean, that's crazy. James Caan's going to be in it. He was Sonny Corleone in Godfather. But they're saying it's just a tapestry of a film and a tapestry of a cast. And again, I'm not really sure what it's going to be about. But There you go. Francis Ford Coppola back in the mix. Just had to bring him up because, like I said, he used to be huge. That guy was just, he was all over it. He like I said, biggest Spielberg, biggest Scorsese. He's buddies with those guys. He did, like I said, outside of those movies that I talked about, Godfather and Apocalypse Now, like Rainmaker. He just always shoots to make movies that aren't, he's one of those guys that says Marvel movies are crap. Scorsese said that. I don't know if they said it in those exact words, and of course, we don't think that on this channel, do we? Nobody better say yes. All right, moving on. Just wanted to talk about him because, like I said, he used to be massive and he's just gone. Is he trying to save himself? Is he trying to save his reputation before he dies or anything like that? I'm not trying to be morbid, but what do you guys think? Comment in or send it to brassreelbobby@gmail.com if you want me to say anything about it more, or if you got something to say about it. All right, so look, moving on to one of the bigger topics, one of the things I had on the thumbnail is old Bondy boy. We got a new trailer today, and man, I thought it looked great. I thought it looked really good. And my buddy as Maniac, he said he wasn't all that pressed with it. He said it didn't just really pique his interest that much. He's like, it's not doing anything for me. And I don't know if he's just tired of it in general with Daniel Craig, or it's the fact that it was, supposed to be released so long ago. But I got to tell you, this trailer did it for me. And, that's what a trailer's supposed to do. A trailer's supposed to really get you pumped up for something you're already kind of excited about. And this one did it. It showed a lot more. It feels like the movie's going to be colder. Like, even in the settings a lot of the time, and the look of it, because, they always go for different themes for Bond films. So look, I personally loved Daniel Craig as Bond. He is my favorite Bond. I think that there is not a better Bond. I truly believe that he's the best Bond that's played the character. I feel like Ian Fleming would say the same, just because I feel like that what the character of Bond is on paper, this guy nails it the best. Not saying that the other guys didn't do a good job. I love all of them in their own right, except for Roger Moore, Grandpa Jimmy Bond. It's not that I don't enjoy those movies, because they're a part of the whole thing, and there's a ton of them. He did more than anybody, but he's definitely just got an element that I can't shake, that he feels like my grandpa. Connery feels cool. Lazenby feels really cool. Roger Moore just feels like my grandpa for some reason. Dalton feels awesome. Pierce Brosnan feels great. To me, Craig, though, is where it's at. Craig is just, I believe that Bond more than any other Bond. Now, again, I'm not trying to just bring him up, my buddy as Maniac, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus, bud. But one of his things is he's not sure about that overarching story that's connecting, because of some of the ways it didn't really necessarily feel like they did that in the first movie on purpose, and that they didn't have that idea, but they sort of manipulated and changed it to that idea later on, especially when you saw Spectre. So I like that. I think it's cool that they did that. They've never done that in a Bond movie before. So to me, that is sort of like Daniel Craig's signature mark on the franchise in his own little thing. It's like, yeah, all these other guys did their Bond movies, but Craig had the 4-part storyline, or 5-part storyline, which is pretty sweet. Now look, Quantum of Solace was arguably a little bit of a misfire. There are good parts of it. It gets a little too superhero for me sometimes, but it still is a Bond movie, and it's still fun at moments, but it's the worst one so far. Casino Royale and Skyfall are, to me, it's really hard to choose which one I think is better. They really are they're so well done. Casino Royale was just a great and fantastic reintroduction to the character. Skyfall was, in my eyes, and I've still said this, is sort of like the quintessential Bond film. I don't know if I've ever seen a Bond movie that truly just throws down like that with the feeling of Bond. It takes place in so many different areas. You get just all these different feelings from the movie that have been done in so many Bond movies. And there's so many homages to the Bond films in that film. You could tell that Sam Mendes directing that was a huge Bond fan. And not every Bond director comes back for another movie, but there are a handful of them that have come back for multiple movies. And now Sam Mendes is one of those guys who's done 2 films because he did Spectre as well, which I liked Spectre. And Spectre was the way that you were truly telling, like, they tried to connect Quantum of Solace with Casino Royale, and they talk about it in there. But Skyfall is the one, especially when you saw Spectre, the way it was like, oh wow, they really are tying this together fully now. Like there's something here that they're trying to go for. And I won't deny it to you as Maniac that I do feel like that they may have shifted gears midway through, like around the Skyfall area. Maybe they've been like, look, we've got an idea here. But I think it works. And I think it was a gear shift that now once you watch them all, it does work. Now you were saying some stuff about why would he be with, oh, what's her name? Madeline Swan. Why would he be with her? I can appreciate that question, but I personally think that he's because I think Daniel Craig plays the Bond character that has a little bit more of the capacity to fall in love. And because he fell in love in Casino Royale, he starts to slightly get a little soft spot for the other girl in Quantum, but he's still, thinking about Vesper. And then he starts to, I feel like he's tainted by Vesper in this one. And this is really showing why he'll never end up with anybody. But apparently something's going on with Madeline Swan in this one as well. I don't think that he's going to be necessary. I mean, of course it's Bond. He's got to hook up with a girl at some point in one of these movies, in every movie, just because that's what he does. But I don't know if it's going to be some sort of an attachment. And from what I understand, Madeline Swan's character is supposed to be something more significant. But the real thing I want to talk about is this guy. So Rami Malek, I've said this for a while now, but now with these new trailers, especially the one coming out last night or this morning, has solidified it for me. Like I'm almost positive he's Dr. No. They're trying to portray him as Dr. No, which if you guys don't know, the guy on the right there in this picture, Dr. No was the original villain of the first film called Dr. No. The very first Bond movie was called Dr. No. It's, I love it. It's a great movie. It was a good one to set the franchise off. And, again, made back in like 62, I think is when it came out. But the reason I think that it's Dr. No, 2 things. One, they show this little layer that they walk in the new trailer. And I wasn't able to get a screenshot of that in the trailer, but they show this layer that Daniel Craig and maybe Madeline Swan or one of the other girls, it shows them walking down in there too. And it has this sort of tropical oasis vibe to it. And that's exactly what happens in Dr. No when Sean Connery and Ursula Andrews, I think is her name, when they walk in there and they're basically being captured and they see this whole underground layer. And it was very cool for the time, but it's very similar looking. But the biggest thing is they're both wearing these robes that, I mean, it just, with the tropical underground layer aspect and these robes that they're wearing and the hair is kind of like very meticulously parted or however. And yeah, this guy was supposed to be, I guess, slightly Asian, certain way. Who knows what they're trying to go for with Rami Malek's character. And I'm sure there's going to be some other connection with him to like Blofeld because Christopher Waltz plays Blofeld in the other 2. So the last one in this one, and he is in this one. So there's got to be some sort of connection, I'm sure, because they like doing that with this Daniel Craig franchise. This is the one they really took the opportunity to start intertwining these films, which they never did prior in the other Bond movies. They were all episodic. So that's making me really think that it's going on. And then on top of that, this is the most recently thing, is Rami Malek even said himself, people asking him of the rumors, are you Dr. No? Because he's playing this other character that's its long weird name. I don't know I can't pronounce it, and I forgot to put it on here. But in the original movie, Dr. No was the only name you heard from the villain. You didn't know his real name. But Rami Malek said this: I would never shoot something like those rumors down. It's intriguing. And when asked which Bond films he watched in preparation for his role, Malek cheekily said, only Dr. No. And so he's not shooting it down. And he said that he prepared for the role by watching Dr. No, and he smiles while he said it. So I think that that's a little something there, a little something to grab onto. And I think it'd be also a cool way for them. They've already been pulling Blofeld in here, which is basically the most famous Bond villain, and to have Dr. No being the first Bond villain, wrapping up Daniel Craig's arc, which is sort of kind of supposed to be an origin story, also a reboot at the same time. I just think it would be fantastic. I think it would be really cool. I think it would be slightly poetic. And, I want to know what's behind this mask. I want to know what's going on there. It's like the Phantom of the Opera mask or something. I think the movie does look good. I'm super excited about it. I'm a Bond fan just in general. I think Rami Malek is really great. And if they were to just bring a little bit more nostalgia into it, like having Blofeld and Dr. No in this movie, maybe it's too fanboyish for some people out there, but for me, I would be really happy with that. I think it'd be really cool. And I don't know, let's face it, when we go see movies, don't we want stuff like that? I mean, are we watching these movies just to it has to be a perfect story that I mean, no, it's like it's Bond, though. It's James Bond. It always was something that was just so awesome. And I feel like with the Daniel Craig movies, one of the things that have made them up their game in that his, like I said, his films from the past Bond films is one, he's a little more hardcore, he's grittier, he's a little more tormented, he's actually an alcoholic, things like that. And the emotion is a little bit more involved in there. And then this whole connection, this like full on like wrapping up saga that's a story arc. I just like that. I think it's cool, especially since it's never been done. So to add some more of that lore to it, I just would like it. I hope they do it. I hope I'm not wrong. Well, moving on, a little horror news. First off, I didn't know anything about this, but I mean, this doesn't surprise me because Shudder's all over it. But Shudder has just announced their 61 days of Halloween. So that's actually a 61 days. They're starting it earlier. So that means they've already started, right? They started today. And they're going to be doing one of the big things on there is just airing movies, all kinds of programming constantly throughout, just all throughout Halloween. If you guys don't have Shudder and you like horror films, I totally would check it out. It is a pretty solid streaming service. No kidding. I mean, it's just got just left and right horror movies, old school to new school, to original programming, to original series and movies, like just all kind of cool stuff. Hey, and a little tip, you can pay like $5.99 for Shudder through Amazon, or you can get AMC Plus through Amazon and get all the AMC stuff, and Shudder just comes free with AMC. So just a little tip there. If you want to get two streaming services just for $2 extra, because the AMC one is $6.99 or $7.99 a month, and Shudder is $5.99 or $6.99 a month. But it's literally only $1 or $2 extra to get both of them. So just real quick to reiterate, if you have Prime and you want to get Shudder, I recommend getting AMC Plus because Shudder comes with it. And AMC Plus, you get a lot of other cool shows and a lot of other horror movies even that aren't on Shudder or Prime. But Prime even has a lot of great, awesome horror movies. Between Prime, Shudder, and AMC Plus, there's a ton of great horror films on there. Like I said, classics all the way up to modern. So anyways, I'm excited that they're putting this out. I want to see it. But one of the biggest things that is coming out on here that I'm really excited about, and I like the first ones, is they're doing the VHS 1994, or just, I think it's just called VHS 94. So I don't know if you guys saw the original VHS, but to me, it was really good. At the time, it was original. It was when I wasn't fully getting sick of found footage yet, but I was really excited about it. And it worked for me. The second one wasn't quite as good. I think they may have even done another one. But with the 80s horror trend going on and 80s being a big just bandwagon, to say it any other, I can't say it any other way. I'm liking that they're leaning in towards this 90s stuff. Fear Street tried to do it a little bit. You got Scream 5 coming back out, or Scream 5 coming out, that's sort of brushing that dust off of the Scream franchise that started in the 90s. So for them to just be doing a 1994 VHS movie or 94 VHS, because you got to think about it, DVDs were coming out in the late 90s. So 94 is sort of the last stint of the big VHS wave, that last little couple years of the VHS wave before DVDs were taken over. I don't know. I just think there's something there. And I like the 90s feel, that 90s era, like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer and all that stuff. So I'll just be curious to see the VHS one on there. And I'm curious to see the 61 Days of Halloween. I mean, that's just a cool idea to just start it an entire month early. For me, I kind of already am looking for an excuse to watch horror movies. But so now that they're doing this, it's like, well, shit, I can't miss out. Got to watch the 61 days. I love it. Let's just double up Halloween. Because, hey, people do that with Christmas. People start celebrating Christmas before Thanksgiving. I know my mom does. I love you, Mom. But man, if they can do that with that, we're going to do it with Halloween. We're going to start celebrating Halloween 2 months a year with Shudder. Thank you, Shudder. 61 days. Hell yeah. Who's with me? Who's coming with me? So, well, speaking of some horror news, though, guys, and I actually just realized that this was coming out on HBO Max as well as the theaters. And that's really got me pumped up because I'll try to go see it in the theaters, but if I can't, I will watch it on HBO Max. But Malignant. And James Wan has just come out recently saying that this is his version of a Giallo film. And now, if you know me and you listen to this channel or you've been watching these live streams, you know that I love Giallo. I love Giallo films. I think that they're just awesome. I think that they're specifically niched into horror in their own little genre that's very important and very influential. It's got its own tone to it, everything like that. But he said that he's going for the Giallo vibe, which they tend to be very artistic. They're color driven. There usually tends to be some sort of supernatural element along with a slasher element, all combined in one. And I don't even necessarily mean the storyline being combined, just there usually has both of those elements in a Giallo film. But he's saying that this is going to be his version of it. And look at the poster of this compared to like one of my favorite ones, Tenebrae. Tenebrae is probably my favorite Giallo film. It's awesome. I can watch it over and over and over. There's something hypnotic about this movie. I really can't describe it. It's kind of like The Shining in a sort of way, and not like it's the same type of movie because it's not. But the hypnotic vibe, that element that just has you just like sort of tranced out in a weird way, and it's horror. And a lot of it is gruesome horror. It's a lot of blood. And like I said, they use that like bright red paint colored blood. It's like all what's the word I'm looking for? Opaque. You know, it's not like the real looking blood. It's got this really like paint opaqueness to it. Anyways, and it's funny that since I'm showing you this poster of Tenebrae, he's even come out recently saying that. So I would say it's a reference to Argento, and Dario Argento is probably the most famous Giallo director out there. But he says, I would say that when I reference Argento, I don't necessarily reference his classics like Deep Red or Suspiria. I would reference more like Trauma, Phenomena, Tenebrae, some of these later ones, just because they've got more and more out there. And saying more and more out there, he's meaning like a little bit more obscure. And if you will, for lack of better description, I felt like that's the spirit of this movie. That's got me really excited because Tenebrae is my favorite one. And the fact that he mentions that in there and he mentions like Deep Red and all that. Now, I love all those other ones. I do like a lot of those movies, but Tenebrae is my favorite one. And the fact that he's comparing that's in the spirit of that, that's great. But he's also saying that he's putting his own spin on it. He's like, basically, I am doing that, but I'm putting some extra stuff on there too. I'm putting my James Wan spin. And look, I think James Wan's a great director. I think he really knows what he's doing. I said this the other day. I'm not sold on everything he does being just a massive hit and being like, surefire hit. Yep, that's awesome. I do think that he's a solid director and I trust him. And even if I was a producer, considering the films that he's made, and I like his visions and I like how ambitious he tries to be, if I was a producer, I would hire him for multiple movies like Warner Brothers has. I see why they did that. I understand why they do that with him because he just makes them a ton of money. The Conjuring universe, obviously, but then Aquaman, I mean, that movie made almost $1 billion, and that he did that. But he's done Fast and Furious stuff. He's done so much stuff. And like I said, he's done the Saw franchise, Insidious. Like I said, Conjuring started off with that, but not started off with that. He started that universe. So I'm really curious to see this next installment from him, his horror vibe, and the fact that It's a haunted feeling deal. It's also, I got a supernatural element of a girl and her old school imaginary friend named Gabriel. And it's a slasher all at the same time. And he's saying, oh, yeah, and it's Giallo. It's my version of Giallo. I'm there. I'm pumped up. It's got me like doubly excited about this movie just because he said that. I'm nerding out on Giallo, but I'm telling you, try to watch some Giallo films out there, guys. And part of me wants to say start with Tenebrae because of how much I love that one. But then you might be let down if you start watching some more because they're not, some of them to me aren't quite as good as this one. Not to say that there aren't a lot that are equally as good, but I just really love Tenebrae. But Suspiria, Deep Red, watch those. And there's a lot of other ones that are even like these weird zombie ones, like uh there's like City of the Dead, there's the House by the Cemetery. I mean, there's just all these crazy, crazy ones. And for some reason I'm drawing a blank on a lot of the ones, but you can, if you look into Giallo films and spell Giallo, you'll find a bunch of them if you start researching it, and you'll see which ones to watch. So it's got me pumped up, this old boy. I mean, all the imagery too with this like knife and everything, that just says Giallo. That just, she yells it. And then this right here with this, it just looks very colorful, and it just, I see the Giallo in there. So hell yeah, James Wan, do your thing, boy. I'm excited. All right, so moving on to a little bit of more Venom news. We were talking about Venom yesterday, keeping its date. It's keeping its October release date, sharing it with Michael Myers on the Halloween Kills coming out. So the question is can it beat it? Do you guys think that it can beat it? And did they officially decide not to make it R just because it's the same month now of Halloween? Because they just released it. Okay, it's PG-13. And the fact that they're releasing it the same week of Halloween makes me think that they're trying to make more money by doing PG-13 instead of R, which, I mean, that's the smart move. If you do it PG-13, a lot of kids can go see it without their folks. You do it R, you got to card people, or you're just not going to let people in. They're little kids, But if it's PG-13, they let anybody in. So I get that. And look, a lot of people don't think that it's like, oh, they didn't just make a PG-13 version. And no, they make a R version and a PG-13 version. I promise you, these days they have all these backup ways of doing it. They just don't take the cuts with the F-bombs and things like that, and they just edit out the footage. I mean, if you watch Friday the 13th, part 5, part 6, if they didn't have any nudity in those movies and any F-bombs, they could be PG-13, because at the time, the MPA was all over those guys and taking out all the on-screen kills. It'd be like, no, you got to cut more. Can't show the on-screen kills. You got to make it off-screen more. Like you show blood splatter on the wall or something. Because in the first ones, 1 through 4 of Friday the 13th, they were gory as hell. You saw the axes go straight into their head. You saw their throats being slit. Like all of it was cool to watch on screen. I mean, that's what's fun about watching horror films. So when you edited it all out like that, it weakens it, but it just shows that they can do it, because with parts 5, 6, 7, and 8, which were hugely edited down, all the directors will tell you, it's like, no, we had these amazing effect shot that we filmed everything. We had the footage, but the MPA just made us cut it down, cut it down, cut it down. And so with that being said, Venom, they can cut Venom down and they can make it PG-13, and they could have an R movie and just make it PG-13. All they got to do is just edit out some of the scenes, change the dialogue, maybe switch out that scene. Like, all right, here's the scene with the F-bomb. Now do a scene without the F-bomb. They do that. So that's slightly disappointing, because Venom, they have been sort of teasing. They did it with part 1, and they've even done it with the second one. The whole time, this whole time they've done it. Sony's teased that it could be R. Joker was successful with an R rating with Warner Brothers. Birds of Prey was R. It wasn't as successful, but that had nothing to do with it being R. That had everything to do with it being a bad movie. But Joker was a great movie, which was R rated, and it worked. It made a lot of money, made a ton of money. So my only thing telling me the reason they just now released today that it's going to be PG-13 for sure, because it's still up until today or last night or whenever that got released, it was still yet to be are still to be rated. Not this film has not yet been rated. And when they do that, that doesn't mean that they don't know what it's going to be yet. That really means that they haven't decided what they want it to be yet. What demographic is how are they really going to make the most money out of it? And right now, with people very sparingly going to see movies and being very choosy on what they're going to go see in that month of Halloween coming out, are they going to just be like, well, we got an R movie going up against an R movie. If we do a PG-13, I guarantee you statistically and on the pages, on numbers, you'll see more money because it's PG-13. You just will. Now, are parents going to take their kids to go see Venom if it was an R movie and not realize it was rated R? Sure, there's a type of capability of that happening too. And a lot of parents like to go to the movies with their kids and they let their kids see R movies. But there's a lot of theaters and a lot of parents that won't. So this just tells me that the reason they're doing it is because Halloween Kills is coming out that same weekend, and they're not going to use an R-rated comic book movie to compete with an R-rated horror film. They're going to say, hey, we're going to make these PG-13 and we're going to have more people go see it. Now, hopefully that's not switching. These days, people like their violence, People are really happy with Suicide Squad, how violent that was. Even though that movie didn't do well in the theaters, that wasn't because people didn't like it. Had nothing to do with people not liking it, because people did. It was very well received. It was just wasn't marketed well, and it was released duly on HBO Max. But we've talked about that. But anyways, I'm just wanted to talk about that a little bit because I do really feel like that we could have had an R-rated Venom if it wouldn't have been for all this switching around, and the fact that they're having to compete with Halloween Kills. Now, there's another thing here. They could be keeping it PG-13 because they want to play ball with these guys, with old Kevin Feige, with the MCU, which leads me into my next little topic and next final discussion. Kevin Feige has recently come out and he's basically had these discussions saying that Secret War isn't a discussion right now. Now, I just don't know if I believe that. I feel like that Secret War is one, it's too big of a story to not tell. The the Russo brothers, Joe and Anthony Russo, have expressed huge interest in coming back for like a two-parter Secret War movie to do another big collective, ending payoff film, which what Infinity War and Endgame were. And to top those movies, you got to do something crazy. Now, look, right now, we're in the middle of a multiverse switchover. And if you guys don't know anything about the Secret War stuff, it is a huge multiverse battle. That's the whole thing this Secret War is a straight up battle between multiverses fighting to remain the last universe. Basically a war to go down to close out all the opportunities for these crossovers to happen again. Because when they do, all this stuff gets chaotic and everything. So Secret Wars is massive in the comics. And also, Secret Wars brings in the black suit with Spider-Man, and there's the symbiote involved and all kind of stuff. Now, I know that's ways down the road, but with Venom coming out very soon and them keeping their October release date, willing to compete with Halloween, tells me they wanted it out before No Way Home. And look, I don't know any of this factually. This is just me wanting and speculating, and there's a little bit of belief in me that this is what's going on. But with Venom coming out like this, Eternals coming out in November, and then Spider-Man No Way Home coming out in December, then we got Doctor Strange coming out at the beginning of next year, which that's the multiverse of madness. I don't know. I feel like it's just leading up to something huge, and they got to do something bigger than Endgame at some point if they want to reach that status again and have some sort of event that people are super dope excited about. They're already doing some crazy stuff with No Way Home, with Doc Ock coming in, with Green Goblin coming in. Obviously, Electro's in there, and we don't know who else, but that's already doing some cool stuff. So I'm thinking that Venom wants to be able to play ball. Well, Sony wants to be able to play ball. And I was listening to a show the other day with some of the guys were talking about this specific topic of Spider-Man and if that new trailer, because it did so good in that 24-hour window, breaking records, topping the in-game viewership, is that going to make Sony want to take Spider-Man back fully? Because Spider-Man is Sony's character, and they only have one more movie in play with Disney after this one. So this was the last. No Way Home in the contract is the last solo film with Disney and Sony because, like I said, Spider-Man is Sony's character. It's the last movie that's solo film in the contract and has one more appearance in a film, meaning that it could be a team up film. He can be in the whole movie, just can't be a Spider-Man movie, and it has to be some other characters in it, which I'm pretty sure he's going to be a Doctor Strange too. I mean, I have to think he's going to be in it. That's the next movie right after No Way Home. I think we all know that, right? Am I wrong? Right? Wrong? Right? So, with all that being said, I think Sony sees the opportunity to be able to play ball. And look, who's to say that they can't, with these multiverses, not still play ball? Who's to say that this isn't something leading up to another thing in like 2 years or even 5 years down the road that maybe we have something that closes off of the multiverse, but we're very aware of it now and we know the severity of it. And then 2, 3, 4 years down the road, we see something happen to where it opens up again. And Sony and them are like, yeah, we got this thing planned now where Spider-Man's going to jump back in, or a new Spider-Man, a different one, Miles Morales, who knows? But I don't think that Sony is going to pass up the opportunity for Venom to be in the MCU. One, because the symbiote is such a huge part of Secret War. And I know Sony wants to be a part of that money, and I feel like that they could negotiate some sort of contract in the end to make Secret War happen to where we can have a symbiote in there. We can get Venom involved. I know that Tom Hardy's been pushing it. So I think it could happen. I think that they're wanting to do it. And this is when Kevin Feige was interviewed recently. He said this right here. I've seen the rumors as well, people talking about Secret Wars in the works, but why is everybody talking about that now? That's what I want to know. I think one person writes about it, and then another person writes about it, and then everybody's writing about it, and then it's happening. I think I call bullshit on all that. What's he going to do? Tell us a Secret War is happening? No, they're not. We didn't even know the title to Endgame. We didn't even know. I mean, obviously, we knew that there was something going on with Thanos because they would put him in there here and there at the end of films. He'd make some sort of appearance or they'd make reference or something. We knew it was building and we knew stones were being collected. But the way that Infinity War and the way Endgame went down and all this stuff, we didn't even really know what was happening. We didn't have the title to Endgame when Infinity War was out. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of stuff that they want to keep on wraps. There's plenty of stuff that I think that I don't know that contracts are fully made after this one with Sony and Disney, but I think that there has to be some sort of talk about it. They have to be talking about going forward with this and trying to build something massive, because why wouldn't they want to be a part of something like Endgame, especially if they can make some money off of it? I think they're doing it. I think Avengers Secret Wars is going to happen at some point, and I think that Spider-Man is going to be in it, and I think Venom's going to be in it because it's a huge part of it. Could they do a Secret Wars movie without Spider-Man and all that? Of course they could, but it's just not going to be the same. And I really do feel like that Sony can make their own movies while still playing with Disney. They just don't always have to have Spider-Man in there. We don't have to have Spider-Man in every MCU film. Spider-Man can just be having some things here and there, here and there. He could go back and start doing some of his things. Because look, New York is where Spider-Man resides. And a lot of things that are starting to go on within the comic books, within the MCU, are very galactic. We're getting the Marvels. We're getting another Guardians movie. We're getting Thor: Love and Thunder. A lot of these things are galactic type stuff that wouldn't even involve Spider-Man. Because think about the comic books. There's a lot of stuff in the comic books that goes on that has nothing to do with Spider-Man when Thor's having his own things happening. When all these people, the Guardians, have their own stories going on. Spider-Man's way, way over here doing his thing. And who says that they can't make their Sony Spider-Man films while the MCU is playing around with some other stuff, getting some more galactic lore built up and having some fun with the Eternals and Shang-Chi 2 and Black Panther 2 and all that stuff? and then swing back around to a new contract with Sony and Disney. And then let's think it's all right. Spider-Man's coming back in for another set of MCU Spider-Man, another round of MCU Spider-Man. I just think it can be done, and I think it will be done. Mark my words on that. I'm not saying it's going to happen in that fashion, and I'm not saying that Spider-Man is going to remain consistently in the MCU, but I know that we're going to have Tom Holland remain as Spider-Man, and I think that Sony can arrange something with Disney to tiptoe in and out, dip in and out when they want to. They can all organize and be on the same page and write some cool stories. The MCU can have their fun without Spider-Man for a little while, having come back in. They can mention him occasionally and things like that to keep the thread there. But overall, I don't see Sony being like, that's it. No more Spider-Man in the MCU, because I think there's too much fun to be had. I think there's too much stuff that can be done with the Spider-Man character in the MCU that then can be cool to take that Peter Parker and now let's make some more movies based on what happened to him and who he is now. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that there's all kind of things that can be done well with the character. And let's face it, the comic books always blended over and always had fun with each other, but they didn't blend over constantly. They did have their own story arcs a lot of the time. So why can't they do that in the movies? Well, I just wanted to end on that, guys, because that's something that was big on my mind, and I meant to talk about that yesterday. So that's going to do it for today's episode, though, guys. I do appreciate y'all tuning in. And hey, look, if you weren't able to talk and everything through the show, if you weren't able to comment on BrassReelBobby@gmail.com. Send me something to talk about. I'm all about it. I definitely want to get involved with the community. If you weren't able to comment on now, always be able to send it into there. I promise you, I'll get back to you. I always want to talk about that stuff. And if you're looking to watch a review, watch my Candyman one. It'll show you what's up with it. Show if you want to like it, if you want to see it or not. And I got my Shang-Chi review going to be coming out Friday. I'm going to see that tomorrow night. And actually, I might take a break tomorrow on the show, guys, just because I got a lot of stuff I need to accomplish, get ready for that Shang-Chi, because I'm going to see it early. And I just got some other things I have to get accomplished before I get behind on some things. If I have some time, I'll still do the show, but we'll see. Either way, I'll notify and make a post out there, or if not, I'll just put the regular thumbnail out like I'm doing the show. But I will notify that in the morning, though, guys. And look, hit the like button if you enjoyed it. For sure, helps me out for like every time you hit that, even if it's just one like. I know YouTube sees it. And definitely don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can help us make it to the top. So look, if I don't see y'all tomorrow, guys, I'll definitely see y'all this weekend on Saturday, because we're going to be doing one of our trilogies and beyond discussions. Me and Esmaniac are going to be doing that. So tune in for that. Not sure what movies we're going to be doing yet, but I'll put a thumbnail out there and we'll be advertising it. So if I don't see you tomorrow, I'll see y'all Saturday, guys. Thank you so much, and make some hot, fresh popcorns. Peace.